I'm going to assume that everyone's here. We'll be doing roll call. Actually, normally Councilor Woodrow would be kicking this off with the call to order, but I asked her for just a few moments before we start. Well, let's start with an introduction. I'm Nathan Bell. I'm the Finance Director for the City of Springfield. And I feel that I'd be remiss to not point out the significance of this evening. When we started the budget back in October, staff put a lot of hard work into this budget. And never in our wildest dreams would we have imagined that we would have finished out the budget process like this. A public virtual budget committee meeting. And it's a first for us, as it is for a lot of agencies across the country. I want to just point out the hard work of Neil Obringer, both in putting the budget together, but additionally preparing for this virtual public budget committee meeting. We've spent a lot of time in meetings ourselves, talking through considerations, the issues, and then bringing people together and doing mock run-throughs and just trying to kind of chase out all the nuances of the process this evening. A lot of time went into this, and you know, I think we've pretty much got it 95% squared away. I'm sure there'll be a few unforeseen issues. We'll respond to them accordingly and creatively, and just have a little bit of patience with us. But I just want to kind of give special recognition to Neil Obringer and all the hard work he's done. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Councilor Woodrow to kick off SEDA.
Okay, great. Can you hear me? Do I have my microphone right?
You do.
Yes.
Okay. Everybody, welcome to the SEDA Budget Committee meeting. I'm a SEDA board chair this year, and I will invite you to the staff to do a roll call for me for everybody. Is that Courtney going to do that for me?
Neil Obringer's going to do it.
Okay.
All right, I'm ready here. So Mayor Lundberg. Commissioner Burney.
Here. I'm sorry.
Colby Phillips.
Yeah, I'm here.
Tina Patel.
I'm here.
Luke Lundberg.
I'm here.
Sean Van, I'm sorry, Councilor Van Gordon.
I am here.
George Jesse.
Present.
Councilor Moe.
Here.
Corey Rodley.
Here.
Councilor Moore.
Can you hear me?
Councilor Moore is on the, oh, I just unmuted her. Councilor Moore is on the line.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm here. What I'm trying to do is do it on the phone so that I can also see my iPad and all the information. So we'll see how this works.
Gabriela Gudero.
I'm here.
Councilor Stair.
Here.
Holly Bauer Shaper.
Here.
Councilor Woodrow.
Here.
Paul Selby.
Here.
Councilor Pictionary.
I am here.
What is Mayor Lundberg? Did she have her microphone muted?
She's not a panelist. She says she's here.
Okay. On SEDA she is, isn't she?
Yeah, but I don't think they've got her listed as a panelist.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We found Christine.
They had me muted, not me muted. I didn't mute myself.
Okay.
Somebody else felt I should be muted.
Uh-oh.
I'm
Okay,
here.
so we everybody's here. All righty.
Can I just check in? Is Mayor Lundberg, are you on as an attendee or a panelist?
Well, it's a seat. We're doing the SEDA budget?
That is
Yes.
correct.
Yeah, I'm going to stay on as a panelist for SEDA, and then I'll just sit in for the rest of it as an observer.
Okay, perfect. I just wanted to make sure that you have webcam access if you have questions later.
Okay, thanks.
All righty, I have a few instructions to read. As we begin our meeting tonight, I would like to remind members of the audience who are joining us online, but attendees will remain muted until the agenda item for public comment. If you are joining us online and wish to speak during the agenda item for public comment, please indicate a desire to speak by clicking the raise your hand button in the GoToWebinar. When it is your turn to provide comment, the organizer will unmute you. You will be asked to provide your name and address and will be limited to 3 minutes per person. For people providing written comment via email, those comments will be read by staff after verbal comment. For people who have pre-scheduled times to call in by phone, staff will call your phone number and connect you via speakerphone. And our next item on the agenda is election of officers. So at this particular point in time, I will ask for nominations for the position of chair. Sean?
That worked really well. I will nominate Councilor Piscineri.
I'll second. Are there any other nominations? All right, then I will call for a vote of the attendees for the position of chair for Joe Piscineri. Respond by saying aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Any opposed?
Are we going to just go ahead and go with a name roll call on the vote?
If there's no opposed, we'll assume that it's a unanimous decision.
Yeah. Any opposed? All right, then it's a unanimous decision, and Joe is as our chair. And let's see, should we do vice chair or should we turn it over to Joe?
Why don't you do vice chair, Councilor
Okay.
Woodruff?
Any nominations for vice chair?
I would like to nominate Luke Lundberg.
I'll second. Are there any other nominations? On that, we will go for a vote for Luke Lundberg as vice chair. Everybody say aye. Whoever says aye.
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 Until I do this often, don't I?
Aye.
Any opposed? And we'll assume it's unanimous, and we will have Luke Lundberg as vice chair. And at this point, I will turn it over to Joe Piscineri as chair.
Thank you very much. I would like to go ahead and start this meeting, open this meeting for opening comments from Nate Bell.
All right. So again, I'm Nathan Bell, and I'm the finance director for the city of Springfield. I want to start out by welcoming the new budget committee members who are citizen members. We have George Jesse, Holly Bauer-Shaper, and then they'll be joining us as well for the city's budget committee later. And then Kobe Phillips, who is our downtown urban renewal member. I also like to mention the returning members, Luke Lundberg, Corey Rodley, Gabrielle Guadero, Paul Selby, and those four will also be joining us for the City Budget Committee meeting later, and Tina Patel, the Glenwood Urban Renewal District member. And I want to thank you for volunteering your time and taking time out of your busy schedule to be here this evening. So we really appreciate that. The SEDA Budget Committee meeting essentially is similar to the city's. It's just a kind of a pared down process. We go through the same motions, just a little shorter time frame. We will have a budget message and a department presentation. Both are actually going to be done by staff member Courtney Griesel. At the end of the presentation, there's going to be an opportunity for questions and deliberations. And you're welcome actually to ask questions throughout her presentation. I asked her that first. I'm just not stating that, and she's comfortable with that. Just a reminder to keep your cameras off, and if you have a question, pop it on. Councilor Piscineri will know that you have a question. Wait for him to call on you. Once you've asked your question, if you can turn your camera off again, and she knows that she can continue. When you're ready, at the end of your packet, there are two motions that you will need to make tonight. to move this budget forward to the SEDA board at a later date for adoption. With that, that's pretty much it for me. This should last about 45 minutes, after which we will take a quick break and then start up the city's budget committee meeting. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Courtney.
Thank you. Nate, are you going to share my presenting ability here?
Neil will.
Okay.
One second here, Courtney.
Okay. It's hard. I feel like I'm on an island out by myself.
You're full
Yeah.
screen now.
I am full screen now. Yeah, I just want to get this going. I apologize for the delay. Okay. Everybody see this first slide?
Yes.
Thank
I see
you.
it. Perfect.
Perfect. So we'll start with talking a little bit about tax increment financing. First of all, my name is Courtney Griesel. I am your Economic Development Manager at the City of Springfield, and our program also covers our 2 tax increment or urban renewal districts. A little bit about urban renewal for those who are new on our committee. It is a tool that we use, really it's a debt financing tool, but it's an ability for us to access future increment or future assessed value, borrow against that future in order to make projects happen today. So what you're seeing here is a graph where the districts are created by the community through a vote, and the assessed value at that moment in time is frozen. And then over the life of the district, as we invest in that area and new assessed value is created, we're able to take that new assessed value and set it off to the side in order to fund projects, either projects we've already done and borrowed to complete or future projects. We have 2 districts in Springfield. We have Glenwood, which is I affectionately call the pork chop on the left, and then downtown, which is on the right. The 2 districts in total make up about 1,000 acres. So for scale, that's about 10% of the community. A community is actually allowed to have about 15% of its land area in a TIF district. So we're only at 10. Both of our plans were started at different times, and both of them will sunset a little differently, and we'll talk about that in the budgets that we're looking at. I'm going to go ahead and start with Glenwood, since that is our oldest district. But first, actually, let me show you a little. So we looked at this slide here where it talked about the frozen base and that increment. This is sort of a generic slide. This is actually what our 2 districts look like with the frozen base and the increment. Increment is in either green or blue, excuse me, and gray is the frozen base. So starting with Glenwood, this district was created in 2005. Our what we have kind of is a maximum indebtedness. That means the amount of money that the district can invest in projects is about $32 million. When the district was created, the assessed value of that area was 106,000, almost 107 million. So it was frozen at that point in time. And over the last 15 years, we have been investing in projects to generate increment. This budget is assuming that in FY21, we will have a tax increment of about $1 million coming back to the districts for investments in projects or in future financing. Some of the specifics of it, about 400 acres in total. As I said, it's established in 2005, but the voters actually approved it in 2004 to set that timing. The plan really focuses on a mix of goals, industrial development, commercial development, adding residential, improving open space. We're really running at and growing the industry, increasing jobs and family wage jobs, and diversifying the traded sector. Glenwood is a pretty incredible place. It offers some of our largest heavy industrial assembled lands and employment lands. And then the riverfront views are pretty unparalleled. Move forward a little bit. So a couple of the programs that we're seeing in Glenwood right now that we are administering, we have a systems development charge program. This is a program that allows us to pay systems development charges on behalf of new developments. We invest heavily in infrastructure and land use planning, doing the different code updates or plan updates needed in order to get sites ready. And we have spent a large majority of the time in Glenwood doing land assembly along the riverfront, but also on other sides of Franklin. The hotel development to the west of Franklin Boulevard, nearest to the I-5 bridgeheads, is a great example of some land assembly done by the Urban Renewal District. We also continue to do quite a bit of business and expansion work. This is an image of Glenwood, specifically locating some of those project areas. So on the far left where it says utilities and brownfield, that was the location that the Urban Renewal Agency originally did some land assembly to support those hotel developments. We've since continued on investing in undergrounding of utilities and doing assessments of contaminated sites, or just understanding how ready adjacent sites might be for redevelopment. We've continued to do land assembly up on the North River front. Right now, we've been focusing on a partnership with some small parcel owners to continue that acquisition. We were heavily involved in the mill expansion project, which was a competitive project with Fran's Bakery, where we helped them double their size. They added an organic bread line. And the Urban Renewal Agency continues to be a solid supporter of some of the recruitment and land use design process down on the south end with that riverfront property, both sides of McVeigh, that's owned by Wildish. This is a look at the budget as you have in your budget book. I put it up here, but I do have it later in the slides as well so that we can come back to it for some line item questions if you have them. Urban Renewal is an interesting budget. It will look different than the rest of the city's budget, partly because we have so much of our revenue coming in from those taxes. It may show as negative, but actually that's just the revenue coming in. What's key about Glenwood at this point is we are not spending more than we are currently making. That said, Urban Renewal does allow for us to invest more than the increment, mainly because we are using that increment to finance debt. I'm going to hop over to downtown. I want to make sure I'm not missing any questions. I'm kind of watching the screen on my right and I'm not seeing anyone pop up, but Councilor Pishneri, I know you'll jump in if I'm missing something.
I will, thanks.
Downtown, here's our chart in downtown, frozen base again in the gray. I'm going to turn my notes. This is one of those moments where I miss having multiple screens in front of me. So our frozen base for downtown was marked at 124 million when the district was created. We have seen increment growing over time. You actually can see quite a bit of growth in the 2012 and 13 range. And then a lot of that vibrant activity you're seeing now actually does show in the data. Taking a look at a flashing. Oh, thank you, AJ. The district itself was created in 2008, so really right at the height of some of the recession and what we were seeing coming off that recession. It was a moment when the community communicated very loudly and clearly that they cared quite a lot about what was going on in downtown and wanted to see this district created. We're expecting in FY21 in this coming year that we'll see about 750,000 coming in an increment that is holding flat. We can talk a little bit about what we believe related to COVID later, but we're not projecting a substantial increment hit in this next year because of the event. It may lag when those come in. So we're holding at the $750,000 projection. Downtown really was identified as one of our mixed-use commercial and retail cores, so we have moved forward with projects very specific and oriented towards infrastructure that supports that mixed-use residential and retail. The district itself started with a higher assessed value, so its maximum indebtedness was also set higher at $43 million over the life of the plan. To date, we've spent about $3.3 million. A lot of that's because the district did get started in the kind of middle of the recession, and so we were able to spend much time planning and preparing. A lot of that $3.3 million was spent on projects, some purchase of property, investments in the pedestrian level lights that we see extending from the bridgeheads all the way out to about 8th. We're looking at some expansion of that. Some art projects have also come into play, and the downtown parking enforcement project is also in here. The downtown plan also supports a loan program. Talk a little bit about that in a moment. We've had one recipient of that loan program so far, but it is quite new. Last year was the first year with it. And we maintain those funds in the budget this year, although we're not sure how businesses will be rallying to do capital projects of that size in the coming months. So we're being patient and nimble. Just some examples of the work that's going on in downtown. The Urban Renewal Agency also staffs the downtown small business staff person, Vahana Keen. She is one of our greatest assets out there on the sidewalk day in and day out. Even now I'm having to make sure she exercises social distance while she's engaging with our businesses that she misses so much. We do a lot of work with the Discover Downtown. That is a brand, but it is also run by the city of Springfield. It manages feature stories, a robust amount of communication. We have quarterly meetups with businesses and really do our best to use a brand that they believe in to promote the activity that they're doing and link them to one another. I do keep the CARES Act assistance image up here on this, because the downtown, the Discover Downtown resource proved to be a huge asset for us over the last month or two in getting information very quickly out to a large number of subscribers so that they could be ready and nimble when applications were available or able to be received. Some of the locations of current activity in downtown. So Swallowtail Distillery is the recipient of our current loan. They're down by the bridgeheads on the far left. We've got some exciting crosswalk projects that have already been funded, and we are just being thoughtful about timing of doing the installs on those right now. We continue to invest in site readiness. So the Buick dealership image down on the bottom is reflective of the redevelopment up near City Hall. That redevelopment will start to look at that site in an adaptive reuse, adding some mixed use and residential. The downtown program also participates in the systems development charge payment program. And we have 2 enterprise zone recipients in downtown, one with Swanson's, which was a really substantial $50 million project. After that mill burned, we expect those assessed values to come back on the tax rolls in the next year and trickle in over the years following. And then we have a elastomer plastic extruder also located in downtown under a 3-year enterprise zone abatement. Did want to touch on parking briefly. So the parking programs for us began at the end of fiscal year 15. We started the program without citations in that year, so we really only started issuing citations in FY16. We've been a relatively soft touch program, prioritizing more communication and just getting turn of parking spaces. This is an image that reflects our costs and our annual revenues associated with that. In FY18, we started to see our revenues come flat with our administrative costs. So the green is permit revenue, blue is citation revenue. In FY19, we actually started to see the program fund itself, and we were only administering the program at part-time at that point. So we were only enforcing 20 hours a week. It was creating some consistency issues. And so we did increase the parking program to full-time in FY20. That contract cost came to $125,000. This is an interesting year because in early March, with the onset of COVID and the acknowledgement that people were starting to defer to sheltering in place proactively, we determined it was best to allow that behavior to occur, and we stopped enforcing actively. We've also paused all billing of permits. We've simply paused the program such that people will not lose their location and their lots, but they're not being billed for them because the demand is low. That said, our staff are still out on the sidewalk. We are having them do traffic counts at the moment, and we are asking that they keep eyes on storefronts in the interim. Moving forward in downtown, we're going to be looking at a couple exciting projects, things we still find. Yes.
Courtney, sorry to interrupt. We have Commissioner Burney would have a question.
Commissioner, yes.
Hey, thank you. This is different. So Courtney, going back to your last slide, I just had a question, and that question suggests that, not that one, the downtown parking one.
Okay, sorry, I'm having tech issues.
Oh, don't worry. I know it's in my head. Don't worry. It looks as if projecting out for FY20 that why would we keep spending enough money for this to be a loss since we still have 7 more months of the calendar year left?
So right now we're not doing any projections other than our program is run under a contract for services. So we are currently employing an office of staff to do that work. We would need to either pause or end the contract. We're not committed to stopping all enforcement through the end of the year. I think we're acknowledging that the context of the world is changing quite frequently.
Well, yeah, all that's well and good, but and it's not a big deal. I'm just wondering, it looks like the intent has been for this to be an enterprise program that pays for itself. And it looks as if, despite the fact that the world is changing, that's not at all informing any changes in administrative costs. That's the end of my question. Thank you.
Sure. So the FY20 revenue projects no revenue coming in for the remainder of FY20 based on COVID. We are definitely open to direction to permanently or long-term change the program, although we might recommend against doing that based on COVID. The ultimate goal of the program is to maintain parking turns in downtown for the retailers over time. So looking forward, it does get to actually parking into the future. Our goal with the parking program, we'll start at the bottom and work up, is to continue expanding some of the resources. We have a need for some longer term parking so that folks can add hours and they don't necessarily have to move a vehicle if they're going to be downtown longer than 3 hours. We continue to invest in downtown art and events. We have a mural being looked at in the coming year. And we're also supporting maintaining the loan program. Again, while we're not sure of the impacts of COVID to the type of demand to the loan program, the same as impacts to demand for parking, we're trying to make those assessments as we can, and as we know more, we'll be able to make adjustments per leadership's direction. There's also some interest in continuing to expand the pedestrian, the decorative lighting. We've been looking at projects out towards 21st as well as up near North A and 8th for that expansion. So we'll be continuing to discuss those details, as well as some infrastructure around expanding fiber connectivity and quality of power in downtown. This is the table, just similar to your packet, showing what we are proposing as the upcoming fiscal year budget. So with that, I have both of these available. I can turn the screen back over and take any questions.
So, Joe, it's Christine. I have a question.
I think you're muted, Counselor.
Yeah, Joe, I think you're. Can I just ask a question, Courtney? I also want to go back to Commissioner Bernie's question too. I really would like to see that parking program maybe break down a little better as to some offsets, or about the fact that that program, that graph looks kind of ominous there, that it looks like we're spending a lot and not necessarily getting any benefit from it. So maybe a better explanation at a different meeting or something, you know. Well, this is our only meeting, but it doesn't, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me too. We're not looking at some way to try and make it at least not cost us a lot of money, because it just looks like it is.
Yeah, I think we absolutely can do that. We can follow up with more detail. When we moved forward with this budget, we were told not to adjust the information provided based on COVID, but we have been talking internally about the new context of things and what that will change. What just is kind of where we've been and where we are now. When we did decide to increase to full-time, we did project a 2 to 3 year window of, again, kind of like startup of revenues needing to work to meet costs. And part of that is just the process of scaling up and then needing to adjust the program and assets. So we're only in year 1 of that scale up, and we have a projection of about 2 more years before we're hoping to hit targets independent of the COVID impacts. So we can do more detail following up.
Okay, thank you, Courtney.
And Mr. Jesse?
Yes, I do have a question. Not sure if it's actually included in the Glenwood area, but is there any information on the indoor track or parking structure? Are those at all related to this SEDA program in Glenwood?
Yeah, so the indoor track and the parking structure, while they're independent, they're both related to our attempts, our work at assembling land for future redevelopment opportunities. The land assembly has been acknowledged as a critical piece to any redevelopment moving forward. And so our focus has been in that, really setting a foundation so that community and elected leadership vision can utilize the land as needed. It could be that it is location of a track, it could be the location of a parking structure or private mixed use. Right now, nothing's been done to preclude any of that other than the continued assembly of land, which we're not quite done yet.
So there's nothing in the 3-year considerations in either of those projects?
No, not yet. Aside from some of the small parcel purchases, but there is not yet anything identified for us to be doing specifically for either of those projects.
Thank you.
Commissioner Burney?
Thank you, Chair. So last year was my first year participating with SEDA, and it's been an honor. I remember that two consultants were brought in, and I was looking at is this the right time to talk about the budget or no? Because I don't want
To talk about the SEDA budget?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
this is SEDA budget.
Yep.
So I noticed there's a big line item, 6-figure line item for last year, and not quite as much proposed for contracts. And I remember you brought a couple of consultants in. I shouldn't say you, I'm sorry, but SEDA had a couple of consultants, and they discussed Glenwood and positioning it and how to initiate the right kind of development. I'm just wondering, whatever happened? Abe came and talked, and my understanding was that he was hired because he ostensibly had relationships with some Portland developers. I know you had another gentleman that came and talked and discussed sort of the traits of the ideal anchor tenant that would then attract others. Just to speak a couple of minutes and I'll stop. Subsequent to that, with this whole COVID-19 thing, the fact that Glenwood and parts of downtown Springfield are in opportunity zones, but now what we're seeing is there's going to be a lot less tax appetite, or I should say, an incentive for people to shelter taxes until they figure out where they are. Some of the biggest groups that potentially could invest there are called what are they called? They're either REITs, right, large REITs, or CMBSs, commercial mortgage-backed securities. They have to wait a period of time before they can determine whether they have to force tenants that can't pay out, and they're going to be looking for places to reinvest. And I'm just wondering how we're aligning the information we got from those two consultants with what the financial picture will be to attract investment in Glenwood. And forgive me for rambling.
So you had a lot of questions in there, and some of them, I think you were on some of the board meetings for those decisions. But so the information, I'll try and see if I can catch them, and if I don't, just let me know if I missed one. The information that came in from Farkas Group, and I think maybe you're also referring to the Tiberius economic consultant.
I apologize, I don't know the name.
Sure. So they provided some very useful and very helpful information to us, as well as introduction to developers. That information has proved to be continuously useful, and actually introduced us to one of the developers who's actively investigating a site in downtown utilizing the opportunity zone. So I think anecdotally, some of the information about where people are at with investing right now is useful, but may not be universal. So we do have several projects continuing to pursue activity right now in Glenwood and downtown. And the information we used with Abe Farkas continues to be relevant and to date. So while we had $113,000 budgeted this year to complete that work, we've only spent about $50,000 of it. We don't anticipate spending more. Right now, we did create market reports and very helpful information out of that. So I'm not sure.
No, for as rambled as I was, you did a great job. Thank you. I'm trying to understand where we're at and where we go from here and what we bought with the contracted services. Thank you.
Yep. Still a lot of conversations. I think there's a lot of really good news. We have some very positive developments that were active pre-COVID and are actually running a little faster right now, anticipating a desire to be ready when the economy starts to respond again.
Thank you, Commissioner Burney. Is there anyone else with more questions for Courtney? Okay. Well, Thank you, Courtney, very much for that thorough presentation and tons of information. I did want to make a comment too on the other side of that parking program that we have, Commissioner Burney, is that we do have the income from the fines and fees and assessments that are against, that are paid for on those tickets. So that goes back into the program as well. It's just not shown in that same graph.
Thank you, sir.
Courtney, this is Sherry.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I did have some questions, but I couldn't figure out how to unmute.
that's okay. I can't
So I
seem to
think
figure it out either.
I think I'm there now. So I'm just looking at some of the budgeted.
No.
Hello?
Yes.
You're still here.
Oh, okay. So I was just looking at some of the budgeted items and it's difficult for me to keep track of where we are. So if it would be helpful if people would mention the page that they're looking at or something so we can kind of all be, I can't quite see everything on my phone, but I'm looking on my iPad. So anyway, under contractual services, I was wondering if that's what Joe was referring to.
Which page?
I'm on page 4 of 9.
4 of 9. And so is this the Glenwood contractual services specifically?
Yeah, this is SEDA Glenwood General Fund 229. Okay.
Yeah, and so FY20 shows 113,000 was the adopted amount.
Right.
So that did include at the time support for Abe Farkas's group to assist with the RFQ. So that was the adopted budget amount. It's not yet the fully expended amount. We are proposing into FY21 less, but we are giving ourselves a little bit of room in anticipation of future direction from the elected body. Urban renewal functions a little different than general fund budgets, so what we don't spend goes back into the urban renewal reserve.
Okay, so on that same line, there's advertising 54,000. It looks like that was the adopted budget. Did we spend the 54,000? We're again proposing to pay 54,000 for advertising.
We have not yet expended that 54,000, so we're pushing it forward. We've spent a little bit on some website development that should be completed shortly, but not anywhere near the 54,000.
Okay, and then I see an increase in the program expense, again, 25,000. So could you just explain to me what that is?
Yeah, so we're starting to try and adjust our budgets in a way that we can manage things a little bit more effectively. We have been purchasing property, and so some of those property purchases result in us having property under control with tenants. So there's a mix of ability to procure appraisals in there, as well as do maintenance on facilities, trying to give us a little bit of room to maintain and manage the assets that we've been accumulating without knowing necessarily whether we'll have an HVAC go out or we may need to do a brownfield cleanup or septic pump.
Okay, and then the last item was the internal contractual services. Again, just would you explain to me what that is? And
Sure, and Nate or Neil Obringer might jump in a little bit, but internal contractual services, I think, supports our internal transfers between departments to support operation of the district.
Okay. So, thank you.
Yeah.
Is there any other questions from the panel? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and move forward to, has anyone raised their hand from the GoToWebinar to ask any questions at this point for public comment? Open the public comment is what I'm doing.
Chair, we have one individual who has raised their hand, Dylan Lamar. I'm going to unmute their microphone now.
Okay, welcome, Mr. Lamar. If you would please state your name and address and for the record, and you have 3 minutes for comments. Mr. Lamar,
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. So if you
Okay,
can,
sorry about that.
if you could state
Sorry
your full
about that.
name and if you could state your full name and full address and for the record and complete your statements in 3 minutes.
Great. Yeah, Dylan Lamar, 55 West 27th Avenue in Eugene. I previously emailed the Budget Committee about a project we're developing in Springfield called the C Street Co-op Revillaging Project. I partnered with Square One Villages, and I'm a local architect and private developer that is partnering with a landowner of this property. It's at C Street and 10th, pretty close to downtown. And we're looking to break ground this summer to build a house and ADU there. And we've partnered with Square One Villages to try and make it permanently affordable housing. The housing would be shared housing for up to 6 households. And I've been in discussions with Aaron Flyfield and as well as Councillor Sean Van Gordon. And we essentially missed the CDBG funding cycle, and so we're submitting a request for up to $60,000 in funding from the Budget Committee to help make this development an affordable housing development. It would be permanently affordable, as the owners would own as a co-op share, like a co-op membership share, and like I said, it would be permanently affordable to families earning 60% of area median income. We're looking at owners providing down payments of up to $7,000 and then having monthly payments at about $730 per month for their own 1-bedroom suite. What else? In addition to that, we're bringing money from private investors. We're calling this social investors, people that have interest in seeing affordable housing, but also will make a modest profit. And they'll get paid back by a mortgage, as well as subsidies and grants that Square One is putting together. And then finally, after the investors are repaid, that funding stream contributes to a funding pool that will feed back into this loop. So this is a pilot project. The funds that accrue in that fund over time will be able to seed more of these developments.
Mr. Lamar?
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you. Are you relating this, your comments to the SEDA budget or the Urban Renewal District budget, or is that more appropriate for the city budget?
Oh no, I'm sorry. Did I raise my hand at the wrong time?
It's okay. You'll have a chance to another shot. You'll have another shot at it.
I'm so sorry. It's not related to SEDA. I was told to log in at 6:15 and raise my hand to comment. So I'm so sorry.
No worries. Be sure to get yourself in queue during our regular budget, and we'll be happy to hear the rest of that out and be able to correlate what you're talking about with the city budget.
Okay, I'm so sorry, guys.
No worries. Do we have any other folks from the public to comment about the SEDA budget?
We have no more individuals with their hands raised, Chair.
Okay, so with that, I'm going to close the public comment and open up deliberations from the panel in regards to the SEDA budget, downtown budget, and the Glenwood SEDA budget. Councillor Van Gordon?
I don't have any deliberations, but I'm ready to make a motion if you're ready for it.
Okay, seeing no one else with their cameras on for deliberations, I would entertain a motion.
I move to approve the budget as proposed by the city manager in the amount of $3,959,745 with no changes.
I second.
Motion has been presented and seconded, and I'm calling on a vote. All in favor indicate by signifying aye.
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 And if there is any opposed, please signify as aye. Hearing no opposed, we'll assume it's unanimous. And the next item, let's see, is I guess at this point we can adjourn.
There's a second motion we need.
Second motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. I moved ahead of it. So there'll be a second motion.
I move to recommend that the Springfield Urban Renewal Agency Board of Directors request the county assessor to provide the maximum amount of revenue for the urban renewal plan areas that may be raised by dividing the taxes under Section 1C, Article 9 of the Oregon Constitution and ORS 457.
A second.
It was seconded by 2, and I caught Mary Lee's voice and then maybe Sherry's.
I think so.
No, no, not me.
It was Tina Patel.
Okay. Thank you, Tina. So I'd like to now call for a vote for all members in favor to signify by aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Is there any members opposed? Is there any abstentions? Okay, seeing how it carries unanimously, the motion has passed. And at that point now, I could adjourn the SEDA meeting. The SEDA meeting, let's see. SEDA, Glenwood, and County Commission representatives now know that you're free to drop off the call as the meeting transitions to the city budget committee process.